In this episode, Empowering Wellness, Voices Revolutionizing Mental Health, I have gathered an incredible panel of ladies who are not just surviving, but thriving and leading the way in mental health advocacy and innovation. They are here to share their journeys, their insights, and transformative work they're doing that could change the way we all think about mental health wellness. Join us at the inaugural Ascend Summit, where empowerment and healing become part of your new reality. Presented by You Are Not Your Trauma podcast, this summit is your gateway to growth, connection, and discovering your true potential. And it's all happening June 28th and 29th in Dallas, Texas. Don't miss your chance to be a part of something life-changing. Early bird tickets are on sale now. Secure your spot today by going to ascend.youarenotyourtrauma.com.
Welcome to the You Are Not Your Trauma podcast, a show that reminds you that you are not alone, your experiences matter, and you are not defined by what you've been through. Each week, you will hear from the host and invited guests who have either personal or professional experience with trauma. They will share their stories and strategies for overcoming past wounds and beginning the journey toward healing and wholeness. Now, here's your host, a gifted speaker, author, coach, and entrepreneur, Harriet M. Harris.
Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of You Are Not Your Trauma, the podcast that brings hope, healing, and inspiration to those who've experienced life's most challenging moments. It's here in this space that we peel back the layers of trauma, not just to expose it, but to understand and overcome it. I'm your host, Harriet M. Harris, and I am so glad that you're here today. I hope that this show is an important part of your healing journey. Now, y'all, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So this month, I want to dedicate this platform to amplifying the voices that advocate, innovate, and lead the charge in transforming mental health landscapes. In this episode, Empowering Wellness, Voices Revolutionizing Mental Health, I have gathered an incredible panel of ladies who are not just surviving, but thriving and leading the way in mental health advocacy and innovation. They are here to share their journeys, their insights, and transformative work they're doing that could change the way we all think about mental health wellness. Okay, joining me today are four remarkable voices in the mental health field: Candace Hayes, Shakira Relaford, Shanti Refuge, and Dr. Carrie Young McWilliams. Now, to kick things off, I'd love for each of you to introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about what you do. Now, we'll start with you, Candace.
Okay. Well, hello, my name is Candace Hayes, and I am a serial entrepreneur. I started out about 16 years ago in the janitorial field. And 4 years ago, I started I started making candles. And here within the last year, I've ventured into becoming an author. And then I got with Alona, and now I'm here with all these wonderful authors, and we are in the anthology book of the Voices of Wellness.
Okay. I love it.
Thank you.
All right, Miss Shakira.
Hello, my name is Shakira Relaford. I'm an associate professor at it's a dual credit program for two different colleges, but we merged together, teaching social and behavioral sciences. And I'm also, like Candace, a serial entrepreneur. I started a nonprofit, and we're growing that and turning that into a school, and to help special needs minority, Black and Latino minority students and families with special needs actually get accessible education, let's put it that way. And so I put my foot in the door there, and then me and my own personal experience with having obsessive compulsive disorder and just managing life with a mental illness in itself, plus being a pastor's wife and having a child and who also has her own barriers. So just the combination of all of that and working through day by day. But I enjoy really helping other people step out of the dark, if you will, like come out of that sticky place and say, hey, you can do this too, you know. So it's not impossible. I also I've done a lot of trauma informed work in elementary schools, trauma informed social emotional learning and support and educational advocacy in elementary schools. So that's what led me here up to this point.
All right. Miss Shanti.
Hello, my name is Shanti Refuge. I'm a certified mental health coach, mental health advocate, keynote speaker, and author. And I work with women, preferably over the age of 30, to help them to release, live, and heal and live their best lives. And I use a coping tool called guided journaling in order to help them do that.
Oh, nice. I like that. Okay. And Dr. Carrie Young McWilliams.
Hello. Um, so I am a certified teacher, principal, superintendent in multiple states. I started my career in working with middle school students who were joy and still are. I currently have a business where I advocate for students whose parents have lost their parental rights via temporary suspension or permanent, and they are in custody of state. Those particular population of students may need a 504 advocate, or they may need specialized services, and I serve on the behalf of the parent who would otherwise advocate for that student.
Okay.
I also have started another business venture with my business partner. And in that endeavor, we work with organizations on DEI/BJ structures, reviewing their structures, their practices, their policies to ensure that DEI/BJ is not just a check off, but it is embedded in the culture of their institution. So we do a lot of executive coaching, one-on-one coaching, and doing equity assessments. And in that, I also write, and that's how I came upon this group, writing and doing some blogging about my experiences, my life. And I was approached about this project, and I've enjoyed every step of it and working this anthology and working with this group of wonderful women.
That is amazing. Well, I am super excited about just our conversation today about getting really into a conversation about mental health. But we are going to take a very quick commercial break. So stay tuned and we will be right back.
Imagine having resources at your fingertips that support you through every step of your healing journey. That's exactly what you'll get with the You Are Not Your Trauma app. Access guided meditations to find your peace, read inspiring stories that resonate with your experiences, and join a community that truly understands. But that's not all. Dive into the Healing Chronicles and participate in community challenges. It's more than an app. It's a companion on your journey of self-discovery and healing. Download the You Are Not Your Trauma app today and join a community where your story matters and your healing journey is honored. Find us on the App Store and Google Play Store. Your journey to healing starts now.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Now, ladies, if you're comfortable, I'd love for you to share, and that's each of you, what drives your passion in mental health and why this work resonates so deeply with you personally. We'll start with you, Candace.
Yeah, so actually, for me, it's personal because I am a parent to a child that had a mental breakdown. And my hopes are to help mothers that are in similar situations or familiar situations that I myself was in. Actually, my son tried to commit suicide. I walked in a room with him when he was hanging from the ceiling. And that in itself was trauma for me. That in itself, I had a lot of dark days because of that, because I felt guilty. It was the mother guilt, the guilt of just thinking that I failed as a mother, I failed as a parent. And if I can help other mothers like that to know that it's not their fault, um, and to be a listening ear, that's my hope. That's my hope. That's my hope right there because um, I really had some dark days, and I never want anybody to feel like I felt with that.
Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Now, Shakira.
For me, it definitely just stems from my own personal experiences or growing up and not having that support or um lack of understanding. I think like generational trauma um has been the central theme, and it's just
Mhm,
been looked at as, well, your behavior is because this is what we all do kind of deal, or this
mhm,
is,
mhm,
something. It's like it's always been something that was reprimanded rather than
mhm,
like, or seen as very negatively. And so, I mean, as I grew up and as I got older and now married, have my own kid, and I recognize immediately where she is, because I was like, oh, I was in that place, right? And how can I then pivot and advocate? My time as a behavior analyst in my former life, right? My former career,
mhm.
I has worked with a lot of families with had kiddos with special needs, and just especially minority, the amount of disregard, right, that existed. Like, I was paid to be there, I was a therapist, I was doing the best I can, and even then, like, prior to me getting there, I don't think families believed that someone with the same face can be in this line of work, and actually be a support system or
Yeah.
anything like that. They've kind of gotten used to the runaround, right?
Mhm,
Or
mhm.
being disregarded or just being invalidated. And so unresolved trauma overall over the lifespan leads to a lot of um a lot of issues. And so I think I just wanted to make it my mission to say, it's okay to heal. Everything that
Mhm,
God reveals, he heals. And
mm,
so that is the dark places that we have to invite him into so we can come out and actually see that the light is possible. And so I just make that my mission, even as I'm teaching, right, to create change agents and disruptors in this world to help break this, you know, toxic generational cycle.
yeah, absolutely. All right, Miss Shanti. Yes.
Yes, Shakira. Um,
Thank you.
I I got into the mental health service from my own experience. I had
Mhm,
a nervous breakdown back in 2018. And at the time, I didn't know what it was. And I was reaching out for help, and either nobody believed me or nobody helped me. And so I used my story. And, after I started my healing journey, I started using my story and to help others so they wouldn't have to go through what I had to go through. Because,
yeah.
even though, we say you are not alone, at that moment when I was
Mhm,
going through what I was going through, I felt alone because nobody
yeah.
understood.
Yep.
And so now my mission is to, make sure you are seen, you're heard, you're validated, your feelings are your feelings. And, through my mental breakdown that I had, I learned that I had traumas that I didn't even know that were traumas. I thought it was
Yeah.
just regular old life, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just what you're supposed to go through. And
Yeah.
it took years, it took for me
Mm-hmm.
to get into my adulthood to look back and say, yes, that was traumatic. How could it not be? How could you not see this as trauma? And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
the generational curse breaker of my
I
family.
love
And,
it.
I'm trying to, help
Yeah.
other women to be, come and, share their story, heal, and, acknowledge and, move ahead. There's no forgetting it, but you can turn your pain into purpose and power. And that's what I do.
Love that. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing.
Thank you.
And Dr. Carrie Young McWilliams. Dr. Carrie.
Mm, yes. I started with, I think, paying some attention to mental health um, when, as a granddaughter of one grandmother on my maternal side, had a full-blown Alzheimer's, and going through that with her and how I dealt. I was very close to her. I was the only local grandchild that would be with her at times, and my paternal grandmother had dementia, which is just another phase. And I was her only grandchild. So having to lose them mentally before losing them physically, before they transition,
Mm-hmm.
and dealing with that, uh, I I think the Lord allowed me a place of peace, and but it still resonates, right? Because as you journey, or as I journey into that age, wondering, or as I look at my parents, wondering, how do you handle that? So I think that was my first introduction
Mm-hmm.
to the theory, the reality of mental health. I think I always knew it was there, but it was
Mm-hmm.
always behind. I'm from the South, behind the colloquialism of "you're getting on my nerve," and nerve being couched as anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
that person, you better not mess with that person, Mr. and Mrs. So and so, they crazy, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really named what illness they were struggling with.
Yeah.
So I think that was the first time it was given something was given a name, and it wasn't something that you could see if you looked at them.
Mm-hmm.
You had to know them and experience it. As I grew to work with people in the public service industry, I work a lot in our communities. I always worked in urban settings, urban core communities. So I work with people who look like myself,
Mm-hmm.
and just the different family structures and the way that society has not catered to nurturing those family structures, and what has come out of that, whether it be a battered woman syndrome, where those mothers are now trying to take care of their children, what the children have been exposed to, Reaganomic era, where drugs were influenced into our neighborhoods and communities and breaking down our families, and
Mm-hmm.
how what impact that's had on each generation, as one of my colleagues said earlier. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so in that regard, I saw in the K-12 arena where students, I didn't feel, were being advocated for as strongly to get their
Mm-hmm.
issues addressed early on. It was always a reactive measure for students. And then that reactive measure wasn't always the best or the most nurturing reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't because parents did not care. Some of them
Right.
did not know. And you
Mm-hmm.
can't do what you don't know. And then some of them knew, and they were barely hanging on for themselves. So they did not know how to reach out and get help for their child, because in our communities, we're very communal people, we're very prideful people.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't necessarily want to go out if you don't have that already connection. So you had a lot of misinformation being given from one person to another, or an issue not being addressed at all. So I decided I could do better outside a system, which I knew how it worked from the inside, to
Mm-hmm.
work with families my biggest draw is students who come through that pipeline of their parents not having their rights. But I also work with their intact family. I've actually represented a lawyer's child. And I mean, she's been to law school, and I was amazed when her husband called me. But it was just dealing with how do I work within the system to get what I know is rightfully for my child? How do I get people to see my child as a child and not her situation or his situation, which we give a lot of to, which comes to white saviorism, which is a whole nother topic. Um, but for me, that's been my mission and my advocacy. So I've done that with young people, ages anywhere from birth to 3, into the group of age 22. And I am starting, my next venture is to start and work on our geriatric population as well, because people don't understand, like, when everybody leaves grandma's house and everybody else grows up and no one's checking on them anymore. How do you advocate for them services? Who notices those different changes in day to day? Why is it that we're putting out silver alerts? Why hasn't somebody noticed the changes before now? So those are the types of things that I want to do, is just to bring a voice and give that systemic um, mechanisms in place so that people can live their best lives and have their quality lives amongst their families and live without the stigma of their families judging them and communities judging them. And it becomes more of the way we live and the way we move throughout society within our community.
That is, wow. I really like your emphasis on the older community. You made me think of my own grandmother. And, now we have all grown up, become adults. We're all, everywhere else, except where we used to spend all of our time, which was at her house. And thankfully, she now lives with one of my aunts and she's not alone, but it definitely makes you, the fact that you mentioned that, it definitely puts that on my mind. Like, ooh, I got to make sure I make some more phone calls, some more check-ins, because that's so important. Okay. Well, thank you, ladies, for just sharing a little bit more about, how and why, mental health is so important to you. And I think it should be important to all of us, but it's always interesting to learn more about, each individual person's story, because, all of us get here in a different way. Now, Shanti, I'm going to come over to you and I want to ask you, from your perspective, what are what are the most promising trends or innovations in mental health that could significantly impact how we address mental health?
Having support groups that's all inclusive, not just tailored to one specific gender, one specific class, if you will, or one specific sexuality or religion. All inclusive support groups. But support groups are becoming more available, because a lot of people, when they hear the word mental health, they think crazy, and that's not what it means. So, I used to think that until, hello, it took me, so I think the innovations of actually people like us on this panel talking about it. We come from totally different, backgrounds, but we're all coming together for the common good, and that's to talk about it and let other people know that it is real and it's out there, and there's all kind of resources, and it's okay to need help. It's okay to ask for help. So making, platforms like this available to people so they can know, okay, I'm not by myself. Let me go talk to her. She look cool, stuff like that. People want people to seem relatable. And
Yes.
I think that's another thing that makes people shy away from, opening up. Is like, okay, she don't look like me. She don't look like she have no black problems. You know what I'm saying? So even some of, the people in the black community don't have black problems, because, we all come from different spaces, but, it is the availability. There's someone out here for everyone in order for you to get the help that you need.
I love
That's
that.
my
People
big thing,
talking about it.
support groups. Yeah.
Yeah. The conversations are so important. And I think it was Dr. Carey who said, we're prideful people. Correct me if that was
Oh,
somebody else,
yes,
but I think that was
yes,
Dr. Carey that said we are
yes.
prideful people.
Yeah.
And that's, it makes it a lot harder sometimes for us to talk about it because of that. And I just love to know what all of you all think about that pride, like how impactful that is with people who need to get things out. Anybody can respond.
We
Well,
in the Black community, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Carey.
thank well, I think my experience has been that as much good as the Black church has had influences in our lives and keeping us together and being our places for schooling and meeting over historical times, it also has instilled some things in us that didn't need to come to us. And one of those things is when something is wrong, it's always attributed to Satan
Yeah.
and not addressed, but kind of swept under the
Mhm.
rug. But you can only keep sweeping stuff under the rug so long until you have a pile after a while and it's no longer under the
Absolutely.
rug. You just got it. You got
Mm.
a rug covering stuff.
Yes.
And
Ooh.
I think we've never come back in the same mechanism and
Yeah.
addressed it and actually spoke to it. We messed up as a organization, as a community, as a church. And I use that, I'm
Mhm.
talking about all denominations.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
We have
Mhm.
agree.
not come back and addressed that and said, hey, this was the narrative, but now we know better. To Dr. Maya Angelou, now we're
Yeah,
going to do better.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
we're going to, you
yes.
can start with us because
Mhm.
there are
Yeah.
people here who can help you. And I think that that is because the community of the Black church has been so pivotal, and we make it so
Yeah.
pivotal everywhere else.
Mhm.
But when it comes to talking about mental illness, we don't want to bring that down. It's like we want to give, we gotta let the devil like have that piece. Like that's his
Let's just
work.
give him more
Yeah,
power.
let's just give him that one more thing, But
Mhm.
no, it's not. God made man to make medicine for
Yes,
certain
yes.
reasons. And
Yes,
some of the
he
medicine is synthetic, some of it ain't. So my thing is that we have to talk about that and removing that
yeah.
veil of that stigma that's
Mhm.
shrouded over it makes it okay. Because when you look in the word, he even speaks about demons and stuff being cast out. But let me tell you something. Those are metaphors. And people,
Mhm.
you can't pick and choose when you want a metaphor to be and when you don't want it to be. I mean,
Take it back.
that's why I have spoken up in several meetings and say, why is it that it's convenient for you to speak this metaphor when it comes to divorce, but it's not okay when I say
Mhm.
this child can't sit for an hour and a half during a service, and we need to have somewhere where they can move about and still get the word in their ear. So, we have to be able to move things along because
Yeah.
most of us on here, I believe, are, I don't want to guess anybody's age, but I'm saying most of us here around Generation X-ish, and we move a different way. We
Yeah.
move a different way. And even millennials, the early millennials, still kind of have some of those traits of Generation X.
Mhm.
But as you get on to the Alpha and the Z stage, it's a different ball game. They have
Yes,
grown
it
up
is.
going to church on Zoom and different. So it's a different feeling of community. That's the only
Yeah.
reason I brought up the generational thing. It's a different way of working and the
Yeah.
mechanism there. So even the definition of community is different. So when you talk about
Mm.
that pride, if you look at the Palestinian and Gaza protest now, that's a different type of protest than my mother when she was a
Mm.
civil rights leader. You know what I mean? Like,
True.
so it's
Yeah.
a different vibe. And so we have to keep up with the times and not leave our people behind. We have to reach them where they are. When I start working with my geriatric population, I have to speak to them differently and move differently than when I'm working with
Yeah.
my younger generation.
That's
Mhm.
And
true.
I have to have enough knowledge to know that that I don't know, I have to go and learn,
Mhm.
right? And
That's
I got to
true.
learn it from the people who got the knowledge. And that might be
Yeah.
somebody who's younger than me, that may be someone who's older than me. And I'm gonna tell you
Mhm.
how we deal with that pride, Sister Harriet. We deal with that pride through humility.
That's
Mm.
good.
You got to serve and be humble.
That's it.
That's it.
And Black
Amen.
women as a whole, we've always been looked at, you strong, you can take it. We
Yep.
you know, sometimes it's stuff that we don't know and we have to learn it from somebody, but make sure you learning it from a good source, a well that has not been tainted.
I
Yeah.
tell my kids that all the time. Like, mommy don't know everything. Look, let's not even get it twisted. Mommy don't know it all. Now,
I
Shanta, you were
think
gonna say, oh, I'm sorry.
I think sometimes us as a culture, I think we're scared to just ask for help, just in general
Mhm.
with this particular subject. I mean, you can talk about everything else, like she said, you can talk about if you have heart problems, if you have diabetes, if you have female problems, but when it comes to mental illness, everybody backs up from it. I think we need to,
Right.
as a culture, do our own research, read and all that. That's just for me. And before my son had his psychotic break, I didn't know a lot of stuff, but I had to learn,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
I had to learn like his patterns. I had to learn like the different medicines. I had to learn. I mean, I had to learn so many things, but before I was just I, I just didn't know. I didn't know a lot about the mental, the mental illness um behaviors. I just didn't know. But I mean, you know, it's yeah. And then too, I think sometimes we're scared to be that person. I think sometimes they're scared they're gonna become that person that they
Mhm.
see, you know. So that's just that's just how I feel.
That's true. You don't want to be the person who, I think it was Dr. Carey who said, the person they say, oh, don't mess with them. That's the crazy
Right,
one.
right, yeah,
You
yeah,
don't want to end up being that
like
person.
that, right, yeah,
Yeah.
As if it were contagious. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right. And
Exactly.
that doesn't even have to. It's just so far from that. It's just so far from that. Just
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Shakira, I'm going to jump over to you. How do you manage your own mental health, mental wellness, given your close involvement with mental health issues? Like, are there specific practices that you find particularly effective?
Uh, God,
Okay.
and strategically, and this is kind of going to be two parts because it's going to piggyback off of the first question and into this
Sure.
one. I think for me, like growing up, I was so a lot of my I call them OC cycles, obsession compulsive cycles, and it just falls
Mm-hmm.
into this habit of patterns, behaviors, etc. Right? I would have a thought, it would be negative, and then I would condemn my own self to hell for thinking that thoughts because of the religious, like religious
Mm-hmm.
OCD is a thing, like a real life thing. It's like, oh, I can't do all these things because I'm gonna go to hell, and if I don't, then not engage in this, then you know what I mean, like something can happen. And so I just thought that everything I did, said, and believed was I was just gonna go to hell. So I did everything I could to prevent from going to hell. When in reality, it just made me more, took me way left. And so
Yeah.
finally it got to the point where I had mid 20s, early 20s ish, graduating college, right? Like at that
Mm-hmm.
that point, graduating college, I had went to the churches I was at. They had introduced a program, and it's called Celebrate Recovery. Right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
Christ-centered recovery group. It's formatted very much like AA, NA, and every other, recovery
Mm-hmm.
program, but you're working toward getting over hurts, habits, and hangups. And
Mm.
so I was like, all right, this is where I clearly need to be. Right. And I went through the program 3 times, but that's what I needed because it was like we in the mental health field, or even as professionals, have to understand. And I teach my students this all the time. It's like psychology, if you will, as what we know it, further proves God's existence. But people in the church want to go the extra mile to discredit it as if the two can't coexist. And they
Mm.
can.
Two things can be true. Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
everything's okay, when your life is unmanageable, if you will, right? Just go pray about it. Right. And then what? Right. And it's like, okay, and then what? Then it's too late. Then who you calling to help you in your time of need? So why is it that the pastor has to know it all and be that beck and call and have to know all these things, and then for the mental health professional it's something that's taboo, and vice versa? Why can't we collaborate and coexist? You almost have to. And if that person has a belief in God, what, I don't, if Buddha, whoever, it don't matter. Like, if there's a higher power, if there's some level of spirituality, we are spiritual beings in the shell of skin. Let's put it that way, right? Whatever belief you have, right, it comes from a spiritual place. So the both worlds need to come together. And so for me, practically, I then had to learn or unlearn all of those behaviors and intrusive thoughts and obsessions to say that's not true. I can recognize when the enemy really is messing with me, or when it's just me messing with me, right. There is a little bit of some underlying differences, but I know though what God's word says. And so I even went as far as like creating a card deck and just putting just some affirmations on there to remind literally to read it out loud, to remind myself daily. And I would have scriptures all over the walls, in the car, wherever, just to transform my mind, like to keep me from falling into that pit of, oh my God, I had this thought, I need to go to hell. No, I need to do this so I don't go to hell, to kind of rectify. Jesus paid it all. Like, literally, Jesus paid it all. And so I'm already free from the consequences of sin, if that makes sense, right? So there's no condemnation I need to hold on to. Practically, though, I still go to meetings. I still talk to my sponsor, right? I still pray, and I still go see a therapist, right? Yes, I am, in church, and I'm teaching and doing biblical counseling even, and all these other things. However, I still need that level of support. I still normalize the conversation, normalize its practices. I am always reminded about the story in the Bible with Nebuchadnezzar, right? King Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel, and he legit went crazy, quote unquote, right? And they were like, we don't know what to do with this man. This man is like literally grew his hair out, grew his nails out, and is outside eating grass, right? Like, just doing all kind of air quote crazy things. But the king had enough sense to know that could nobody help him but God. And so that's when Daniel was called. Not David, Daniel was called. Hey, can you come over here and play the harp? And that was almost the only thing that got him through. Now, he had to still go through the experience for 7 years because God was using this to teach him a lesson. Everything ain't always the devil's fault. God would use these opportunities to get us to where we need to be. So I say, even with my own experience with having a mental breakdown, I see it as a gift. I didn't let it go far, right? Number one. Number two, you gotta understand where is it that he wants to take me. It's a part of the plan. I don't understand the outcome, but it is a part of the plan. And I don't see it as a failure. I see it as a pivot. If this is the only way that God to get my attention, hey, I don't like it, but I need to pivot toward that. You see what I mean? And so learning to be flexible and pivot is something that I almost have to implement as a lifestyle. Things happen, okay, so that doesn't mean I need to freak out. Have a moment, go put on some music, go play a podcast, go exercise, go treat yourself to your favorite meal, do what you need to do, right? And then come back and start over. And so I just say, like, I personally cannot live my life in, if you will, normalcy, because that's not even a thing, but as far as typical life, that's free or reduced of symptoms without God. He made me, so he knew this is not a surprise to him. This isn't a shock, but I then have a closer relationship with him because of it.
I like that. And you made a very good point, is that we can believe in God and believe in psychology or mental health, in the practices of getting help and talking to a professional. My grandmother, she's been gone a long time, but she was a very big mental health advocate. Like people were always really surprised. And my mom said that, she believed, she said, look, God created those people just like I think it was Dr. Carey who mentioned it. Like God created these people and gave them these roles, this knowledge, this education for a reason. We got to use it. And I think that is very important for us to believe and not get so hung up on, one part of God's creation and not the rest of it. So, okay, Miss Candace, I'm going to come over to you now. I want to know, what changes would you like to see in the approach to mental health care and wellness? And how do you think these changes can improve support for people?
I think asking for the help that you need is very important, and not being prideful about it. It's just like if you go and you break your arm, you're going to go to the doctor because you need either a cast on or a sling, to get it back to where it needs to go. And that's just the same thing as mental health. Asking for the help, going to get it, and not being afraid. It's not, I think TV world has it all messed up for a lot of people, because they see people in stray jackets and all that, and that's not what it is.
Yeah.
And I think if we get out of that, if we get our minds out of that, and just knowing that somebody sitting beside you in a restaurant could be having some issues that look just like me and you, so I think we just need to get out of that pride and ask for the help that we need.
That is for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that doing that definitely would get us, a lot of us, because I hear and I talk to so many people and they're saying, I know I need the help, but then they're so afraid. So, and I think that's where, I think that's that valuable part of it, is to take the action to go and get it, because knowing we need it is only part of it. Or knowing that we need help is only part of it. We gotta, as you mentioned, gotta take that action.
Just breaking that stigma, but we got to get that out there, breaking the stigma that we have in our culture. I don't know how it got there. I don't know the history behind it, but that's bad. It's really bad. That stigma is bad. It's bad for the culture.
If I could add a couple of things you said, what I know from the educational perspective about changes that I would like to see. I would like to see more PHP programs, part day programs for people, and it be accessible, because there are people who want to ask for help, but they don't know where to go, and they end up treating how the mental episode has manifested itself, where it be cutting, or whether it be an explosion or something inside, climax of their emotions in a situation where they are brought into an emergency or urgent care place, and then they're stabilized for the moment, but there's no long-term treatment. So I would like to see more PHP programs, and then wraparound services.
Could you tell us what, because I think I know,
Oh,
but
I'm
I want to make
sorry.
sure
There I am with my lingo.
our audience. Could you tell us what
PHP is
PHP?
partial hospitalization program.
Okay.
So you may not be in the hospital forever, or some people think that, as what Candace said, being locked away, but a partial hospitalization program is usually a treatment plan where you can go and probably go to group, go to talk therapy, or whatever type therapy is being used. And someone there is also managing your medication, so that you're being seen, and you may be checked in for a while, because they need to know if you're going to have a reaction, because if you've never been on something before, and how that's going to interact and change your behavior. So it's a partial day program, and of course the opposite of that is being more long term. Wraparound services in communities that engage with schools, so that it is not a stigma. I think starting to talk about having wellness clinics with young people so they know it's okay to go and talk to somebody if something has happened in their community. I think that that is very, we have immunization wellness clinics. So I think it's just as equally important to have mental wellness clinics as well. And the other thing I think is crucial because everybody in our society, the way it's set up, goes into pre-K 12 education. It's compulsory in most areas unless you're getting homeschooled. So in that regard, I see that there's a need for us to have more pre-service teacher and pre-service administration training. When I got my certification, um, I don't even think we talked about mental wellness. So I think people need to know, other than what the local buzzword is in the educational journal for the day, and a few strategies to incorporate in their lesson plan. They really need to know what needs to be in place to be proactive and work with people where it's been identified. And the next level would be to be able to recognize if there may be traits of, not diagnosed, because I have to remind my colleagues oftentimes, you may have a doctor in front of your name, but you're not a physician. So that's not your role. So I have to let them know that quite often. Um, and then the next part would be after it manifests itself, educating people, even if it's our school resource officers. Okay, this is not this person. This is this person's illness right now, and it needs to be handled a different way. So I think those are some things that I would like to see change within our society and within our communities at large.
Those could all be very helpful. I think we could probably all agree. Um, I think um, the one you mentioned about the partial hospitalization program, I think things like that in the wraparound sessions in the schools, informing the kids, I think those things are super important because if we have, and I can't remember which one of you mentioned it earlier, but if we consistently have situations where the parents can't pull themselves together enough that they can't help their children, and then we are constantly in this battle of things just not getting better because there's nobody to pull us up out of it. But as Miss Shanti said, somebody got to be that generational curse breaker in the family. So we got to provide, like, those services would be amazing to be able to help our our generations that are to come to be those people for their families. So thank you for sharing that, ladies. I appreciate it. Now, Dr. Carey, why do you think it's important to have open discussions about mental health, and how can these conversations help reduce stigma and support individuals?
I think it's important because the things that are important to us, we talk about, right? So, and it matters to us. Anywhere from spreading a gossip or a rumor, it's important to you for some reason because it's hitting a nerve. You're either jealous, but it's important enough for you to recall and talk about, or you're
Mhm.
learning something and the reason you're talking about it is because you want to know more about it. So one thing those both ends of the spectrums have in common is that it's important to you. So
Yeah.
we need to talk about things that are important to us. And if our emotional well-being is important to us, we need to talk about it just like we talk about high blood pressure, diabetes, heart attack, and everything else that we talk about. Um, we talk about more about my ovaries and my uterus than, and some of them people don't even have ovaries and uterus
Right.
anymore. So, and half the population don't have. But everybody has an emotional state, so
That's
we
true.
should be talking about this just as much and putting just as many
Mhm.
resources into that piece.
Yeah.
But we all know that there are other motives behind keeping for-profit um, incarceration institutions full, and
Yes.
and not having enough beds for or enough partial day programs for people to get the help that they need. So I think that we definitely have to have those things in place in order, and we have to have a place to talk, right?
Yeah.
So as I said earlier, my generation, I mean, church wasn't an option, you know.
Yeah.
Things have gotten a little different. So
Yes.
you don't necessarily have that automatic gathering spot. That's why when I
Yeah.
went back and I said the populace that has to go to school from pre-K to 12, that's your more captive audience. Your
Mm-hmm.
child is there 7 to 8 hours a day, and more than that if they're involved in any extracurricular activities. That is your more captive audience, and that's where you're building next year's workforce. So if you want your workforce to look different,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to start training the people that are entering that workforce, and you're gonna
Yeah.
have to start exposing it. We talk about everything else. We talk about math. We talk about English, and some of these things. That's a whole nother podcast. We could talk about
Mm-hmm.
AI. So we talk about all those types of things. We talk about concussions in the NBA and in sports. All of that is important, but so is our mental wellness because everyone doesn't play. Everyone is not going to be a great writer. Everyone is not going to be a statistician, but every one of those people have an emotional well-being that needs to be tended
Yes.
to. And we need to
Yeah.
stop pretending as if it doesn't exist. I would also like to see that mandatory psyche evaluations be done. And I would like for some better ones to come out because our people, brown people, don't often volunteer for
Yeah.
research because of
Yeah.
things that happen, as far back as Tuskegee. And
Yep.
I wasn't back then, but I can see what people are saying. No is no. But if we're not part of the study, if we don't know how it's going to impact us,
Yeah.
and now you're studying and you're basing it based on someone whose life and lived experience isn't like mine.
That's
So I
right.
would like to see those instruments updated because, yes, sometimes I think people can be misdiagnosed, not purposefully, just because you're using a flawed instrument based on
Mm.
people that are not like us. So it goes so deep to the point that there are other things that need to be in the medical field, more research being done with people of color and making people of color feel safe for that research to be done and knowing that they won't be harmed in that way and being compensated fairly. So once that's done and you can bring that into the classroom, you're now gaining your knowledge and your foundational skills, and you're knowing how to care for yourself emotionally as you move about. Whether that means you're seeking professional help or you know the
Mm-hmm.
signs when you need to seek professional help. And the people that are in the schools need to be aware of that and not aware of it in a place where it is punitive, but aware of it in a place of how do we support and plan for this student so that they can be their best selves by the time they leave our school district.
Wow. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. I completely agree. That boy, you hit the nail on the head when you said that we talk about the things that are important to us. And, as you were mentioning some of the things that are hot and heavy topics, we do know that anytime mental health comes up, if someone is dealing with something, it's this dark cloud over it, or, somebody had a heart attack. Okay, yeah, we're gonna pray for them. We're lifting them up. We get as much details. But somebody had a breakdown, or they had anxiety, or they were depressed, and it's we're
Oh,
gonna.
girl, she got to stop worrying about all that, and that stuff get to her. But let somebody
Mm-hmm.
have a heart attack. You asking for the key to get into that cupboards to move all the salt, all the
Mm-hmm.
chips. You're trying to get everything out their way so that their environment is right when they come back to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're not
Yeah.
trying to see what was that sister or brother dealing with. How
Yeah.
can we help them cope
Yeah.
with that and let them know, okay, your lights got turned off. These are some services out here that's gonna help you. You don't have
That's
to
it.
go to that extreme. And next
Yeah.
time you're feeling this way, let's do this first. So yeah, we as a community tend to really talk about what we talk about. And sometimes I think people don't act because they don't know what to say. That's why we got
Yeah.
to talk
That's
about it
true.
more.
Yeah. And it's like you said earlier, we community is different. Like, we community in a sense differently,
Yep.
because like you mentioned, back in the day, we had people that came in to help with certain things that were happening. And I think now everybody is so into their corners that sometimes it feels like you don't even have that person, or that person to go to. I mean, I know I'm raising my family, living hundreds of miles. I've never lived as an adult near my family, but I think of how I grew up, in the could get to my grandmother's house in less than 20 minutes, around all of the aunts and cousins. Like I was always around people. My parents forever had that help. And families these days, they don't necessarily have that same help. Um, it's just not available for us. So it makes it even harder, I think, to reach out, because who you reaching out to? So
Absolutely. And my children now, I have a 21 and 27-year-old who had their own challenges. And now they have had adult conversations with me, believe it or not, that didn't involve money for once. Uh, that they were telling Mom, I'm not sure. I have one that's like, she's not sure she's gonna even have children for that
mm,
reason. I'm not
mm,
sure I see. But so our family units may even be getting smaller
yeah,
so that some
yeah,
generations are going to have these chunks of
mm,
you're going to see the population
mm,
decrease and decline because some children, then they're making a decision not to get married until later, and then they're making a decision, some of them not to even have children.
yeah, yeah. That is true. Well, ladies, this has been so amazing. I am so thankful that we were able to come together, to have this conversation. I think it was much needed. I think that and the timing is perfect. So I want to thank you all for your empowering and invaluable insights. Now, we are going to take another short break, but don't go away, because when we return, we're going to hear each of our guests' final thoughts. So we will be right back.
Want a chance to win exclusive You Are Not Your Trauma merch? Here's how. Leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform and share your thoughts with us. It helps us reach more listeners who may also be seeking healing and growth. Once you left your feedback, visit feedback.youarenotyourtrauma.com to let us know you've entered by entering your info and the word feedback in the message section. You could be a lucky winner. Now stay tuned for today's inspiring episode, and thank you for being a part of the You Are Not Your Trauma community.
Okay, everyone, welcome back. Now, as we wrap up today's discussion, I'd like to ask each of you ladies, for a brief final thought or a key takeaway that you hope our listeners will carry with them. And Candace, we're going to come back and we're going to start with you.
Okay. I guess my final thing would be, um, get the help that you need, ask for help. Don't be scared to ask for help. Um, and know that you might, and this is just for me, I know I felt alone. I know I felt like nobody understood what I was going through. But get the support system that you need. A true support system will help you a long way, a very long way. Get those support systems and those people that you can actually trust, so you can you can express yourself, because those things that sometimes you feel bottled up inside and you can't get it out, you know go to those support systems, get those support systems, and they will help you tremendously.
Right. A good support system is so important. Okay, Dr. Carey.
A couple of things. One, I would like to say that no is a complete answer.
Mm,
Sometimes you just have to say no. Taking rest is not a reflection on your productivity as a person. And remember that life is a beautiful mess, but we can only untangle what we can untangle one strand at a time. And you are you're beautiful, and there's no reason for you to feel otherwise. We all have things that we're dealing with. It is just manifesting and doing it in a healthy way. And that doesn't make you any less of a person. It doesn't make you any less beautiful. It doesn't make you any less intelligent. It just makes you human. And you have to remember that we are dealing with a human cardinal realm, and we are dealing with a spiritual realm. And as my sister Shakira said, you pray for those things you can pray for. But as my grandmother used to say, then you have to put feet on those prayers and put a system and a process in place to get help on this side of your utopia, your heaven. And that is what we're here to do, is to try to help you a little bit at a time on finding some help on this side of your utopia. But indeed, stay in prayer and stay humble, because everybody's dealing with something. You just may not see it.
That's it. That's good.
All right, Miss Shakira.
My final thoughts is, if you don't take anything away, just understand this one thing, and it's freed me from a lot of ruminations over the years, right? And just overthinking and everything. Other people's perceptions of you is not your reality.
Mm.
And so, as Candace mentioned, as Dr. Carey mentioned, like you have not because you ask not. You know you need the help. Go get it. And number one, understand and identify I need help. That's step one, right? We're coming out of that denial. My life is becoming manageable. I need something, right? Um, don't expect everyone to just understand your cry for help.
Yeah.
Because we all have different patterns and behaviors or whatever. But you also don't allow other people to project their trauma onto you, because that's not your job. You,
Absolutely.
we have our own crosses, we got to carry it, right? Like
Mhm.
we cannot carry the burden for everybody else. But other people's perceptions isn't your reality. So don't allow that, and by perceptions in this example, I'm talking stigma. And so don't allow that to become real, because it is for you, because it's not real at all. They're usually substantiated out of their own personal drama, trauma, and
Mhm.
negative experiences. And so once me personally adopted that, I've just been telling the world about it. Like, hey, just remember this one thing, right? Because that'll give you the opportunity to stop and think, or
Mhm.
stop and breathe,
Yeah.
and then go into your, move forward in whatever you need to move forward in. And it's okay to not be okay. No one is
That part.
expecting or requiring you to be perfect, not even God, the Father or the Holy Spirit. No one is requiring you or expecting you to be perfect. If nothing else, that's why they're there, as a help, as an aid,
Mhm.
as support. And and at the end of the day, no matter what happens, we're gonna be okay.
It'll be okay.
Well, there's gonna be the sunlight is coming the next day.
Yeah.
We're gonna be okay.
We're gonna be okay. I love it.
Amen.
And Miss Shanti.
My takeaway, if for those who are listening, is know that you are deserving, you are worthy, and you deserve to have good mental health. And if you feel like you don't, do something about it. You can change your situation. No one is going to come and
Mhm.
save you. No one can read your mind. You have to
Mhm.
open your mouth and
Mhm.
say, "Hey, something's going on," even if you don't understand what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you know you better than anyone else. So pay
Mhm.
attention to your body. Pay attention to those, thoughts that you didn't used to have, and all of a sudden you're having them. It's telling you something. Get the help
Yeah.
you need, and a support system is very important, because if you think you could do it by yourself, you are sadly mistaken. You cannot do it by yourself. I know, because I tried, and I just made things worse. So there are support systems, and your support system is not going to be your mama, your family, your cousin, your good girlfriend. That's not going to be your support system in the way that you
Yeah.
need. You need a support system that is able to listen, understand, and offer help to you in order for you to overcome whatever it is that you're going through. And, lastly, you are not your trauma. You're not what they say you did. Even if you did do it back then, that's not you.
Mhm.
That's a whole, another instance. And, don't believe what they say about you. You know who you are. God knows who you are, and you walk in that, purpose and that faith, that knowing that things will get better. We all go through things, but it's up to you to get your behind up and keep going.
Yes. Yes. I love all of that, ladies. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to each of you for joining me today. Like, this has been an amazing conversation. And again, like I said, it is a much needed conversation. So, for everybody that's out there listening, I want y'all to remember that your journey to wellness is a courageous path. And as we learned today, like, you deserve to have good mental health. You are worthy of it, and you are not alone. I know a lot of times we get in this thing of thinking, and someone mentioned this earlier, we think we're by ourselves, and that makes the journey harder. And one of the reasons that I felt like this platform needed to be out here and available is to let people know, because I know for me personally, when I felt I was alone, it was so much harder. But as I continue to talk to people and I learn about other people's stories, and just knowing the courage, like, for each of you, it took courage to come and share some of the most vulnerable, some of the most hard experiences that you've gone through. And so I want you to know that I appreciate that, because I know that it helped me, and I know it helps other people as well. So again, I say thank you all so much. Now, for all of our listeners out there, as always, I want you all to join the conversation. We'd love to hear what wellness looks like and means to you. I want you to share your thoughts on social media with the hashtag empowering wellness voices, and be sure to tag You're Not Your Trauma podcast on Facebook, IG, or TikTok. Make videos, we watching for them. But let's keep this very crucial conversation going. And for everyone out there, again, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. Your presence is a vital part of this collective journey. Now, if you found today's episode helpful, please don't forget to share it with someone who can benefit from the information that these beautiful ladies have shared with us today. Also, I want you to be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show. I recently announced, for anybody who's always listening, that the Ascend Summit 24 is happening this summer, June 28th and 29th in Dallas, Texas. So please be sure to mark your calendars. This is going to be an incredible opportunity to hear from experts, connect with fellow survivors, and discover new strategies to aid your journey. We are going to have some speakers that come out, and they're going to talk through Ascend, which is activate, strengthen, connect, empower, navigate, and dream. We're going to have some breakout sessions. We're going to have some amazing panels, and we're going to have a resource fair to connect you with the resources that you need before you leave the summit, so you go home ready to move forward. Tickets are on sale now, so you can get those tickets at ascend.youarenotyourtrauma.com. You can also check out our website, www.youarenotyourtrauma.com, to leave feedback, request to be a guest on the show, subscribe to the show, get information on show guests, or to get information about advertising on You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. Be sure to connect with You Are Not Your Trauma podcast on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. And if you have a story to share, please email me at contact@harrietmharris.com. Also, don't forget to download the You Are Not Your Trauma app for more resources and community support. It is a fantastic tool to accompany you on your healing journey. It is available in the Google Play Store and the App Store. So until next time, y'all, keep embracing your story, your strength, and your ability to change not just your own life, but the world around you. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.